Okay. Now, this arachnoid matter, it forms what? This arachnoid matter and the pia matter. The difference, it is also thin membrane, this is also thin membrane. It is relatively avascular, but it is highly vascular. Okay, this pia matter is highly vascular membrane which is forming what? It is lining the whole the gyri as well as the sulci to its deepest aspect. This pia matter. That means this pia matter, it is the part and parcel of the brain itself. So in between the arachnoid matter and the pia matter, there is a space which is known as the subarachnoid space. Okay, and all the vessels and the nerves are sitting over here. And these vessels, through these vessels, there will be branches which will be going to supply the cortical region, cortex of the brain. That means the cerebral artery. Suppose the anterior cerebral artery, the middle cerebral artery or the posterior cerebral artery which is going to supply the cortex of the brain. Okay. So how it supplies and what are the layers which is coming at the adjacent side of this. Look at, see a diagram here. This is the bone. This is the endosteal lining. Okay. Here it is the meningeal layer. Here it is the arachnoid matter. And here it is the pia matter. Now, and the sulci, brain is here. This pia matter, what it do with the gyri and sulci? It is lining all the sides of the gyri and sulci like this. Isn't it? This is the cerebral cortex here. These are the gyri and these are the deepest part, these are the sulci here. So, and we have said this is the subarachnoid space. What is this? This is the subarachnoid space in this. So, the cortex, this is the cerebral cortex, this is the pia matter, this is the arachnoid matter. Okay. Now, the vessels are sitting here. So, what will be the contribution by these two layers to the cerebral artery? It is a very, very important topic. You must know that. First, before going in detail, have you heard the name of lymphatics of the brain? You must be knowing the blood supply of brain, the venous drainage of brain. But what about the lymphatics of brain?
Lymphatics.
Whether the lymphatics are present or not?
No, ma'am. It is by the peripheral spaces.
Very good. There is no lymphatics. In brain there is no lymphatics. In brain no lymphatic channel is there. Okay. A very important part of the brain. There is no lymphatic here. Then is there any structure which is replacing this lymphatic channel inside the brain? Yes, there is a structure which is known as what? Perivascular space. Very good. You have answered. That is the PG level question basis. Perivascular space. Perivascular space. And naturally what this terminology means? Peri, around what? The vessels. Okay? Perivascular space. So, any artery, suppose it is artery which is sitting here, the branches which is going to supply this cerebral cortex here, once this is the cerebrospinal fluid is also present in the subarachnoid space, must be knowing that, and these are the vessels. Then what happens? These arachnoid matter, these blood vessels, they doesn't bath in the cerebrospinal fluid. First of all, these blood vessels are present in the subarachnoid space, but it doesn't bath here. This is the paradox. How? Because it is lined by the projection. The arachnoid matter, it will provide a sleeve here to the walls of the artery. one layer. It will receive what? It will receive one layer by the arachnoid matter here. Okay? But what does the pia matter do? Just outer to the surface of this pia matter. This is the pia matter, the pink line. Okay? Outer to this, there are anastomosis of the cerebral vessels or the arteries, externally as well as internally inside the cranial cavity, mind it. But there again, there is a part of the cerebral arteries which is supplying the cortex. They are known as the end arteries, isn't it? They are known as the end arteries. Then how this is possible? So look here. When a branch which is going to supply the cerebral cortex here, it receives one slip from the arachnoid matter, and once it will pierce the cerebral cortex, it will again get a lining from this arachnoid matter here. The arachnoid matter, it will provide a lining to this artery. It will sheath the pia matter. What it will do? Once the artery, the branches which are going to supply the cortex here, gyri of the brain, then what it will do? It will split here. The pia matter, it will split and it will encloses the artery towards the brain, cortical region. Up to which level? Up to the capillary level. Okay? Up to the capillary level. Very, very important part to be understand here. This artery which is going to supply the brain, it is getting two slits. One via the arachnoid matter and the other via this pia matter. So there is a space around the two layers of the meninges, that is the arachnoid matter and the pia matter. The space which is created between the two sleeves over the artery, it is known as the perivascular space, and this perivascular space, it is also known as, anyone? Virchow-Robbins space. Virchow-Robbins space. Okay? Sometimes it might be asked from the PG students especially or UG also. So Virchow-Robbins space, it is perivascular space, and this perivascular, Virchow was the French anatomist, mind it, and Robbins was the German pathologist. Okay, so this perivascular space here, it is replacing the lymphatic channels inside the brain. Then that means this perivascular space, it is not in continuation with the cerebrospinal fluid. It is draining the brain tissue fluid, and then the brain tissue fluid, it is moving towards the brain in the cerebrospinal fluid. That was important. Okay, so this was now another functional significance that was related with the dura mater, and is very important because now we are going to discuss very important part of this, whatever we have read just now, that is the cranial cavity, the folds of the dura mater, okay, and or the meninges, whatever it is, dura mater, arachnoid matter and the pia mater, that is the intracranial hemorrhages we are going to describe now. Intracranial hemorrhage. Intracranial hemorrhage. Okay. What does this nomenclature means? That means the hemorrhage, the collection of the blood inside the cranial cavity. Okay. Now we have discussed the layers of the meninges, outer to inner. That is the dura mater, the arachnoid mater and the pia mater. So the intracranial hemorrhages are of how many types? Anyone? The applied aspect of these meninges here. Anyone? It is 4 in number. Extradural. The first is extradural hemorrhage. Then there is the subdural hemorrhage. Then subarachnoid hemorrhage. Subarachnoid cerebral hemorrhage. Cerebral hemorrhage. So we will discuss all these 4 types of hemorrhages right now. This extradural hemorrhage, I am making a diagram for you all. Just see. This is the bone, okay, part of the skull. This is the endosteal layer. Here it is the endosteal layer. This is the endosteal layer of the dura mater. Then what else? There will be again a meningeal layer. This is the meningeal layer here. And this is the arachnoid matter. Again, these are the cerebral cortical region here, and this line by this. Okay. So look here. This is the cranium or the bony part of the skull, which is lined by the endosteal layer of the dura mater. What happens? Just now we are dealing with the extradural hemorrhage. First of all, the first concept should be why it is extradural. Why the nomenclature is extradural? But it is this hemorrhage. It is sitting. It is placed in between the 2 layers of the dura mater itself. That is the endosteal layer as well as the meningeal layer. And why it is called? Anatomically it should not be like that, but clinically it is the extradural hemorrhage which is present in between the endosteal and the meningeal layer of the dura mater. Okay. So this is the blood clot. Now this extradural, that means this is a misnomer here. Okay, anatomically this is the misnomer, extradural hemorrhage. It should be present outside the endosteal layer also, but endosteal layer I have explained earlier, it is serving the purpose of the periosteum. Okay, it is just lining the vault of the skull from inner side. So practically this is the meningeal layer which is in relation with this hemorrhage. That's why it is known as the just outside the meningeal layer. It means the extradural hemorrhage. Okay, now what for being the hemorrhage there should be the blood source and where it is placed. What is the site of the extradural hemorrhage? Anyone? Look here. In the previous class, one lecture class, I have explained nomenclature terion. Look here. This is the norma lateralis. That means the lateral view of the skull. And look here, the antero-inferior angle of the parietal bone. With here there is the meeting point of 4 bones. I will not go in detail right now. So this was the point where the 4 bones you articulate here, which is known as the terion. Okay, and just opposite to this terion, just opposite to this terion here, there is the pathway of which artery just outside this. Very good. The middle meningeal artery, a branch of the maxillary artery we will discuss in the infratemporal fossa. So it has got the anterior trunk and the posterior trunk. In this extradural hemorrhage, the most common artery which is liable to be ruptured, it is the anterior trunk of the middle meningeal artery, not the posterior one. Okay, it is the anterior trunk of the middle meningeal artery which is liable to be ruptured, and this liable to be ruptured, it is but more common when these vessels or the artery traverses into a bony canal some distance in the bony canal in this area, okay, in the terion from the inner aspect. If these vessels will traverse through this bony canal, then it will more prone for the rupture and it will produce the extradural hemorrhage. That means from where the blow to the skull is given, that means from the lateral side. Okay, the blow to the skull, it is from the lateral aspect, not the anteriorly, not the posteriorly. Okay, that is something else. So when the lateral blow to the skull is given, these artery, that is the middle meningeal artery or the veins, they are liable to be ruptured, but mainly it is the artery which is liable to be ruptured here. So the source of the blood, it is mainly arterial source. So there are contrasting between the extradural hemorrhage and the subdural hemorrhage. It lies just outside this meningeal layer, and this subdural hemorrhage, it will lie in beneath the, look here. Again, here it is the cortex or the cortical space. Here it is the endosteal layer. Here it is the meningeal layer. Because of what? The green color and the pink color, both are the dura mater, D. And the hemorrhage is, this is the extradural. This is the extradural and this is the subdural. That means just below the dura mater it should be present. Okay. Here it is the brain cortical area, and the collection of blood should be present where? Just beneath the dura mater. Then it will fulfill its name, that subdural hemorrhage. Okay. So the vein here, the source is the venous blood, and the blood will be connected in between the dura mater and the, again, the arachnoid mater here. And the pattern of its collection, it is different. It is different from the collection of the what? Extradural hemorrhage. So there are contrasting in between the, here the blue color. This blue color, there is the clotted blood just below the meningeal layer, and this is the arachnoid mater here. That means in the subdural space it is situated. Okay. Now here the impact on the skull, it is from the lateral side. When you will compare the both the hemorrhages, here the blow is on the skull is from the lateral side in the extradural hemorrhage, and the artery is liable to be ruptured, that is the anterior trunk of the middle meningeal artery. So the source of the blood is arterial blood. Now here the subdural hemorrhage, when it happens, it will be present in just below the dura mater and the arachnoid mater. Okay, that's why it is known as the subdural hemorrhage. Then the impact or the blow where it is given to produce this subdural hemorrhage, the blow is from the anterior side or the posterior side of the skull, or either anteriorly. A minor blow on the anterior-posterior will lead to the anterior-posterior displacement of the brain. Okay, and the superior cerebral vein, are the source of the ruptured, getting to be ruptured here, because after passing through this layer, subdural layer, it go and drain in the superior sagittal sinus, isn't it? So the source of the blood for this subdural hemorrhage is superior cerebral vein. That is the superior cerebral veins are there, which are liable to be ruptured, because before going inside for the drainage to the superior sagittal sinus, it runs through some distance in the subdural space, and when the minor blow it is produced anteroposteriorly, that will lead to the rupture, tearing of these superior cerebral veins, and 50% of these cases it is seen bilateral. Okay, this is very important part. 50% of this subdural hemorrhage is bilaterally either side of the mid-sagittal vein. Okay, because superior cerebral veins are the sources of the blood. Okay, so there are so many contrasting features between the extradural. Here it is the arterial blood, here it is the venous blood. The blow is on the chorion here. Here it is the that means the lateral aspect of the skull. Here the blow is from the anterior-posterior aspect. Okay, what else? When you will see the CT scan, what are the features of the extradural hemorrhage and the subdural hemorrhage? Here the meninges, what happens? Here, because here the source is an artery, isn't it? Here the source is an artery, and that is the anterior trunk of the middle meningeal artery, and the pressure of the artery it is more than the vein. So there will be abrupt sudden collection of the blood inside this area. Okay, and the clot will, what does this clot will do? It will produce the pressure symptom over the lateral aspect of the brain, especially which part of the cerebrum? That is the motor area. Motor area which is situated in the precentral gyrus here, it will produce the motor symptoms there. So it is a very, very important condition that should be immediately be removed. The blood clot should be immediately removed from this area to prevent the pressure symptoms over the brain. Okay. Now how it is possible? What does the surgeon do? There is a burr hole technique where it is done. A very important question again. This is the zygomatic arch. Okay, arch. This is the zygomatic arch. The midpoint of this zygomatic arch, it is 4 centimeter or 1.5 inch. Above this arch, there is the burr hole. Burr hole technique is done by the surgeons, neurosurgeons, and the blood clot should be removed immediately to prevent these symptoms. Okay, that is the main aspect of it. Now this subdural hemorrhage in the CT scan, it is seen as a crescentic shape. Why? Here it is seen as a biconvex because the clot is, there is abrupt, not abrupt, here the blood it is coming at a higher speed. It is collected at a higher, faster rate because the source is an artery. Here there is sluggish, gradual accumulation of the blood just beneath the dura mater because the source is a vein here. Okay, that's why it is seen in the crescentic shape here. So that is the subdural hemorrhage. Now this was both the contrasting features. Is that clear? What is the difference between extradural and the subdural hemorrhage? It is an arterial source. Here it is the venous source, meaning the superior cerebral vein, but the artery may be ruptured but the artery, when the source of the subdural hemorrhage, when it will become artery, then it will be more dangerous than the venous part. Okay, so these were the two, extradural hemorrhage and the subdural hemorrhage. Now, what is subarachnoid hemorrhage? Subarachnoid hemorrhage. What is subarachnoid hemorrhage? That means, as the nomenclature says, subarachnoid. That means this hemorrhage, the blood will be present below the arachnoid matter, isn't it? So the subarachnoid space, the arterial anastomosis, that is the circle of Willis, which we will discuss in the next coming classes, the blood supply of brain. Right now you just think that there is a circular pattern under artery of Willis. Artery of Willis is there, which is the anastomotic channel of the different arteries at the base of the brain in the subarachnoid space. Okay, from these sources, these vessels are the sources of this subarachnoid hemorrhage. That means the vessels which are present in the subarachnoid subarachnoid space will be liable to be ruptured to produce this subarachnoid hemorrhage. And what will be the symptoms here? What will be the symptoms here? This intracranial hemorrhage, this variety, it is mainly due to what? Vascular lesion. First thing you have to keep in mind, the vascular lesion is there. Vessels is lesion there, that is known as the aneurysm. Aneurysm, that only which can be congenital. There is a congenital, that means congenitally what is that? The tunica media of the arterial wall, it is lacking here, which leads to the thinning of the wall. Again, if the congenital aneurysm, it will be predisposed by what is the important structure which is supposed to block an artery? Atheromatous plaque is there. Okay, when it is predisposed, then again it will totally block the artery and it will be liable to be ruptured here. So the subarachnoid hemorrhage, it is mainly to the vascular lesion, and that vascular lesion is what? It is the congenital aneurysm. Okay, abnormal dilatation of the artery because there is the lacking of the tunica media inside that. Okay, and what it will lead to? What are the symptoms here? There are triad: severe headache in the mainly the posterior. Severe headache is present there. Severe, the patient will come. Severe headache, then stiffness of the neck, stiffness of neck result, stiffness of neck, and the loss of consciousness. Okay, this is the triad of the subarachnoid hemorrhage. That is severe headache, the stiffness of the neck, and the loss of the consciousness. So this is the subarachnoid hemorrhage. Okay, it is mainly due to the vascular lesion, that is the congenital aneurysm. Now comes the cerebral hemorrhage. Cerebral. Fourth one, that is the cerebral hemorrhage. What do you mean by this cerebral hemorrhage? Have you heard the name of artery of cerebral hemorrhage, which is also known as the Charcot's artery?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good.
Middle cerebral artery.
Yes.
Cerebral artery lateral striate.
Lenticulostriate branch of middle cerebral artery. Remember it. Middle cerebral artery. A very, very important point to be noted here for Viva objective. The lenticulostriate branch of the middle cerebral artery. Okay, that means in the upcoming class, the blood supply of brain, we will discuss in detail the sources of the artery, what are going to supply the cerebrum. It is the anterior cerebral artery, the middle cerebral artery itself, and the posterior cerebral artery. One of the middle cerebral artery, deeper striate branches, that is the lenticulostriate branch of the middle cerebral artery. It is liable to be ruptured here. Why? Because this type of hemorrhage, what is a hemorrhage of a brain hemorrhage? It is usually this type of hemorrhage is mainly seen in the middle-aged person. Which type of middle-aged person? Which is aged person which is predisposing hypertension. Okay, hypertension, which means the rupture of the atheromatous plaques are also there. So this lenticulostriate branch of the middle cerebral artery, it is damaged here in this cerebral hemorrhage, and it is known as the artery of cerebral hemorrhage or the Charcot's artery. So this were all the varieties of the intracranial hemorrhage. Okay, intracranial hemorrhage: extradural, the subdural, the subarachnoid, and the cerebral. Above downwards, gradually above downwards, from the dura mater up to the cerebral area. These were the four varieties of the intracranial hemorrhage. What were there? How the impact of the blow, where it is given in the extradural. It is given the impact. The blow is from the lateral side of the skull, and subdural antero-posteriorly. The subarachnoid hemorrhage, it is due to the vascular lesion itself, that is the aneurysm. And this cerebral hemorrhage, it is mainly seen in the hypertensive patients, middle-aged group people, which is due to this lenticulostriate branch of the middle cerebral artery. Okay, so this was in the nutshell all about the folds of the dura mater, the dural venous sinuses, the cavernous sinuses, the functional significance of the meninges. What does it? How is the meninges protects the brain? What are the role of these meninges here? And one more important function of this arachnoid matter is anyone which I have left, which I have missed. What is that? Why the optic nerve? It is supposed to be the continuation of the brain substance itself. That will be the answer. The second cranial nerve, that is the optic nerve. Okay? Second, that is the optic nerve. Why it is supposed to be the continuation of the brain substance after the eyeball. Look here, here is the eyeball and here it is the optic nerve. Okay, so one by one, all the three layers, that is the dura, then the arachnoid and then the pia mater. Okay, all runs together. Along with this cranial nerve from the cranial cavity to the eyeball. That's why, that means the subarachnoid, the cerebrospinal, the subarachnoid space, it is continued with the orbital cavity here. This is the what? Dura mater, this is the arachnoid mater and this is the pia mater and this is the optic nerve. And the purpose of the meninges is to cover the brain, and this here it is covering the optic nerve especially up to the eyeball. That's why it is supposed to be the continuation of the brain substance, isn't it? So this is one of the important part of this arachnoid mater and this meninges, which is sheathing this optic nerve. So in the next class, students, in the next class, upcoming Tuesday, we will discuss the blood supply of brain. So prepare this properly. First you give a reading of that and then we will discuss in the next class. Okay, thank you. And I have uploaded my previous class on YouTube also. So if anybody who have not attended the class can see from the YouTube. Dr. Rekha Sinha Anatomy lectures. Okay. Thank you.